Shabbat Shalom, everybody. I was tempted to open the service with Yo Semites, but of course, everyone, including Yosemanites, is welcome to our Shabbat. A few program notes before we begin. The holidays are coming up, and we are going to do them right here on YouTube. It'll be a much bigger production featuring participation by many of our own members. We'll have professional recordings of our music, including some little video tricks that we're doing. Arthur and I are practicing everything in our production meetings. I'll be at the temple at some point recording my talks and some introductions and so forth. It will really be as close as we can come to being together. And we're hoping to be out of this very, very soon. We'll have a Zoom memorial service on Yom Kippur afternoon, which will allow for maximum participation. And that will incorporate the dedication of our memorial garden wall names that we do every year, and a special Zoom Spinoza program, High Holidays, on the 20th of September when we are in our Spinoza session. That's a Sunday. And then also fun for those of you who are here in Southeast Michigan and are members of our congregation, we will be distributing some treats and other goodies for the holiday. So look for that as well. If you are interested in becoming a member, please be aware that we now have a no dues policy. Doesn't mean we don't want you to contribute financially. We very much do, but we do not set the amount. You do, and you make a pledge to do that. So if you're interested in learning more about it, you can find the information at our website, or even better, use the contact form there and let us know. We'd love to welcome you to membership at this time. We will begin, as we always do, in song as we hear Hine Matov.
Hine Matov u'manayim, shevet achim gam yachad. Hine Matov u'manayim, shevet achim gam yachad. Hine Matov, shevet achim gam yachad. Hine Matov, shevet achim gam yachad. Hine Matov u'manayim, 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 yalalai la 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 la. Hine Matov u'manayim, yalalai la 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 la. Hine Matov u'manayim, hine Matov u'manayim, hine Matov u'manayim, yalalai la 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 la. Hine Matov u'manayim, shevet achim gam yachad. Hine Matov u'manayim, shevet achim gam yachad.
We begin with our first reading. Our ancestors hallowed the Sabbath day. In dark times, it was a refuge for them, and in times of prosperity, it gave them rest and joy. As a community, we celebrate the opportunity to gather, even if only in spirit, as we imagine Shabbat anew. May we too find rest from our stresses and refuge from our cares. May we too feel the warmth of love and the sense of community. May we too feel our joys heightened and our sorrows softened by the love we give and receive. May we be blessed with Shabbat joy. May we be blessed with Shabbat peace. May we be blessed with Shabbat light. We'll continue now as we light our candles. Baruch haor ba'olam. Baruch haor ba'adam. Baruch haor b'shalom. B'shalom. Baruch haor. Baruch haor. B'Shabbat. Let's continue with Ma Tovu.
Ma tovu ohalecha Yaakov, ohalecha Yaakov, mishkenotecha Yisrael. Ma tovu ohalecha Yaakov, ohalecha Yaakov, mishkenotecha Yisrael. Likrat Shabbat lechu v'nelcha, lechu v'nelcha. Ki mekor habracha, mekor habracha. Ma tovu ohalecha Yaakov, ohalecha Yaakov, mishkenotecha Yisrael. Ma tovu ohalecha Yaakov, ohalecha Yaakov, mishkenotecha Yisrael.
How beautiful are our tents when we stand together in unity and love, in the name of hope and harmony. How fragile are our tents when our fears divide us, when we allow outside winds to blow within. Who but we ourselves can define who we are? What keeps us strong? What keeps us whole? Who but we ourselves can shield us, carrying one another as one against the storm? How fair are our tents when we stand together in the name of unity, in compassion, in strength, for our children and our children's children. Ken Yehi, may we be so. Let us strive to lead loving, compassionate lives with our heart, with our wisdom, and with our actions. These are the ideas that we inscribe in our innermost hearts. May we practice them day and night, teaching them diligently to our children through our words and especially through our deeds, so that the next generations learn to revere and celebrate life. Efo Ori. tonight we're going to hear from Sarah Levin. Sarah is the program coordinator of a initiative by the Society for Humanistic Judaism called Jews for a Secular Democracy. It's a pluralistic idea. Sarah herself is the founder of a consulting firm called Secular Strategies. It's pioneering the mobilization of secularist voters and leveraging participation in interfaith coalitions to counter the religious right with a pluralistic, progressive group. Sarah previously served as Director of Grassroots and Community Programs and Director of Governmental Affairs at the Secular Coalition for America, of which the Society for Humanistic Judaism is a member agency. And she currently represents, among other things that she does in the secular community, Our Voice as co-chair of the Democratic National Committee's Interfaith Council, where she has been influential in promoting the concerns of secular Americans. I recorded this interview with her earlier in the week. Sarah, hello. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. And I've already introduced you, of course, to everybody, so we're going to get right into it. Tell us a little bit about Jews for Secular Democracy, its relationship to the Society for Humanistic Judaism, and so forth.
Sure. Thanks for having me. So Jews for a Secular Democracy is a campaign, an initiative of the Society for Humanistic Judaism that is galvanizing Jews to defend the separation of church and state. It's a pluralistic initiative. And so what makes it, I think, unique for SHJ is that we're really trying to engage Jews from all kinds of faith backgrounds and traditions, as well as non-theistic and secular Jews, but it's not exclusive to humanistic Jews, because we're really trying to bring our shared perspective as Jews to the issues that touch on separation of church and state.
So it's a little bit like Americans United for Separation of Church and State and its coalition building kind of capacity, that it's not just for the way Secular Coalition of America is, not just representing non-theists, but everybody. How have you found that bringing together of the broader Jewish world? Are you seeing some responsiveness from that?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think early on, I was really happy to see that we were able to engage, for example, an Orthodox Jewish nurse in New York when we had a webinar earlier in the year about the pandemic and kind of how religion and government was playing out in the shelter-in-place orders, and of course, scientific integrity really comes into the mix when you talk about church-state separation, because it's not that we're just saying, keep religion out of government. How do you make policy if you're not basing it on doctrine and dogma? Of course, it's reason and science, and that's also a problem, as we've seen in this administration, that they don't make policy based on science and evidence. And so we had that webinar, and we had a wonderful discussion. And one of our panelists was an Orthodox Jewish nurse. We've also we've engaged with folks from all kinds of backgrounds, and I think the approach is always from shared values and common ground, and I think the response has been great.
What is that? You speak about us coming from the Jewish experience on our commitment to secularism. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, Jews came to this country as immigrants and refugees themselves. And, while it may not seem immediately obvious, that is one of the issues that we talk about with Jews for a Secular Democracy, because we've seen a Muslim ban, for example, which is imposing a religious test on people entering the country. We saw Attorney General Sessions quote the Bible to justify the family separation policy. We know that Christian nationalism and white supremacy overlap. And so there's a lot to dig in there. And we know that discrimination on the basis of religion has impacted our community, both in this country and around the world. As I'm sure you and your members know very well, there were institutions in this country that we were not allowed in. And it's the constitutional separation of religion and government that has protected us. But no one really has religious freedom when everyone is not protected by their constitutional right to religious freedom. And so I think bringing our perspective of kind of where we've been and where we are, as a community, both in the United States and the world, and how important it has been for us to be protected by constitutional separation of church and state, is where we can bring a unique perspective. There are lots of great Jewish organizations that are doing social justice work, and there's lots of great secular organizations that do church-state separation work. But Jews for a Secular Democracy is uniquely positioned to advocate for separation of church and state from the Jewish perspective based on our historical experience.
So this is I don't mean this to be a gotcha because we didn't talk about it in the pre-interview, but there seems to have been a hijacking of the idea of religious liberty that's come from the religious right. Without putting you on the spot too much, this has kind of, for me at least, changed the equation of how we talk about this, because they're using our language in a way that's really about religious non-liberty. Is there something you could add to that?
Well, first of all, there's an interesting article that Interfaith Alliance put out about religious liberty versus religious freedom. So I try to use the term religious freedom as opposed to religious liberty. There could be debate about that, but I think the emphasis, liberty is there's nothing wrong with liberty, but there's a very individualistic perspective on it that I think is taken to the extreme of, my individual rights can supersede the rights of others when my individual actions are impacting others. And that's the biggest problem with the way that it's been weaponized, right? Is that, it's supposed to be that, the right to swing your fist ends at my nose, right? But that's not what's happening. The religious right is weaponizing religious liberty to basically grant them the right to discriminate against anyone on the basis of religion. And frankly, it plays out in the mask debate too, right? Which shouldn't even be a debate, but this, crying for liberty to not wear a mask wherever you want. It's like, well, you don't have the right to endanger other people's lives. You don't have the right to make other people sick. Our freedoms are really important, but they're not limitless, because when there's a conflict between your rights and someone else's, especially when, we have to negotiate that. And I think in general, if there is harm toward the other person, that's where we can sort of draw a line. So to your original question of, they've co-opted it. First of all, I would say that they tend to say religious liberty. I would advise us to say religious freedom, but that's kind of getting nitpicky. I think it's more about redefining what it means and taking it back, because you're right, they really have co-opted it. But a lot of Americans, I think, still understand the importance of religious freedom. It's just that they're not necessarily aware of kind of what's happening to the degree that we, in our bubble of the secular world, kind of know what's happening. I mean, the words Christian nationalism they don't necessarily know what it means. They might have a lot of assumptions about what it means, but I think one of the things that has made the religious right so successful is that they're kind of operating in plain view, but also under the radar at the same time. Like, they're consistently underestimated. I was listening to a podcast the other day by Public Religion Research Institute. They did a really interesting study on feelings and views on LGBTQ rights. And one thing they found is that Americans, a huge portion of Americans, think there are protections that don't actually exist for LGBTQ people. And I would venture to guess that that's probably true about church-state separation, that probably a huge swath of Americans probably think that church-state separation is more protected than it currently is. And I found that in my work when I say, well, did you know that there are religious exemptions for child abuse and neglect? Did you know that there's all this money going to private religious schools that are allowed to discriminate and don't have to teach a secular curriculum? People are surprised, and they're outraged by it, but when we're operating from a space where the average person who may actually agree with us on the issues doesn't even know how much church-state separation has been undermined, that we have all of this education to do before we even get to the point of changing that. And this was really reinforced by a poll that Americans United for Separation of Church and State did about American views on church-state separation. One of the things that came out of it was, yes, there's a lot of support for the constitutional separation of church and state and religious freedom as we understand it, but there is not a level of urgency. That a lot of people don't think that church-state separation is generally under attack. that's a problem. And so I think where Jews for Secular Democracy comes in is, I don't think we should be afraid to use the word religious freedom. I think that we just need to be very conscious of how we are reframing it. And being really effective and persuasive in the way that we talk about it. And we have to really keep in mind, well, everything I just said, that a lot of people are not as aware as we are of what the problems are. And so our advocacy really has to incorporate a lot of education and kind of assuming that people are not aware of how much this wall of separation has been chipped away.
So apropos of that, this is a new organization, Jews for a Secular Democracy, Secular American Democracy, but you all have waded in already with a lot of projects, and you're the program coordinator. Can you tell us about some of the efforts that you're working on educationally, and also if you're doing some lobbying, what have you?
Absolutely, and I will just say, it's not a separate organization. It's all under the SHJ umbrella.
Right.
So it's an initiative, but right now, the last few months, we've been focused on setting up our volunteer program and setting up our volunteers for success. So we put together a pretty comprehensive advocacy and communications toolkit and trainings that we just finished last week. We have a continued series of webinars that are meant to cover other topics that our volunteers may want to work on. So for example, we'll have a Q&A open discussion with a professor who is an expert on the use of Judeo-Christian values, because I think it's really important that our volunteers, before they go and educate others about why that phrase and how it's being used is problematic, that we ourselves understand the history of where that's been and how it's used now, so that we can come from a place that's informed when we talk to other people about, well, here's actually why this is problematic, and why as Jews, you can be an ally to us by not using the phrase Judeo-Christian values, because it's not actually as inclusive as you think it might be. So we just finished the training, and tomorrow evening, we're recording, they're hearing this on Friday. So Tuesday evening, we had a volunteer meetup, and it surely won't be the last one. But basically, we're getting to a place where we really want to work with volunteers on working on the ground in a way that makes sense for their state, that makes sense for their interests, that makes sense for their volunteer capacity. There's so many ways to get involved, and we want to encourage people to do kind of what's right for their area. What folks are going to want to do in Florida is going to be totally different from what folks want to do in California versus Texas. So whether it's putting together a voter guide so that you can educate other folks in the community about where candidates stand on issues of church-state separation, whether it's preparing to either introduce or fight back bills that will be introduced in the state legislature next year, whether it is doing educational work or entering interfaith spaces. And we have a webinar coming up about how to effectively enter an interfaith space. We really, at the end of the day, want our volunteers to claim their seat at the table. And we're, as a staff, we've been, over the past few months, really focusing on putting together the tools that they need to do so effectively. And now we're really moving into the stage of, like, okay, now it's time to connect the volunteers with each other, because the great thing is, we have a lot of volunteers who are from humanistic Jewish congregations, but we're also bringing people in who have heard about our webinars online and signed up that way. So I think it's going to be really wonderful coming together of folks who aren't necessarily from the humanistic Jewish world, together with our humanistic Jewish world to advocate together. I'm really hoping that we can get our volunteers excited about voter GOTV and voter protection. I think that's going to be of interest to a lot of folks. So that's kind of the last few months. We started off the year with a lot of great programming to kind of get people interested in the topic and give folks a sense of how broad, where church-state separation touches a lot of different issues. So we had one on secular education and featured a teacher in Florida, and Yafed from New York, talking about the problems of access to secular education. We had the one I mentioned earlier about the pandemic. And so, I think education is a huge part of advocacy, as I mentioned earlier. And so I think by starting with educating our own folks, we're now moving into getting them to educate others and figure out what is sort of the right size advocacy project with support from the staff. In addition to that, we're still very much trying to stay engaged at the national level. And so Jews for Secular Democracy has signed on to a lot of coalition letters that are produced by reproductive rights groups and that sort of thing. And I know Paul has been sharing those with the Jews for Secular Democracy listserv, so you can check that out and see what we've signed up onto. So at the same time that we're really trying to forge those partnerships and put the voice of Jews for Secular Democracy out there on the national level, in terms of programmatically, we're really focused on equipping our volunteers to make a difference on the ground.
So I know that people can sign up on the website, jfasd.org, to volunteer. And I also know that at least 4 of the webinars are also there, so folks can watch them, and we'll put those links up on the broadcast. Are there other kinds of things that you want to hear from our members and from other people who are watching our YouTube tonight?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I understand a lot of folks wear a lot of hats. So if you can't volunteer now, I still encourage you to get on the listserv. It's a separate list from the Society for Humanistic Judaism, although, we do cross post just to stay up to date on what we're doing, to join the webinars, to stay up to date, because I think even if you can't volunteer to do a project, you certainly want to stay informed about these issues so that you can have those conversations in your congregations, with your family, with your friends, sharing contact on your social networks. We know that a lot of folks get their news these days from social media. There's a lot of misinformation, so we want to do as much as we can to put out correct information about what's going on. Definitely don't underestimate the power of sharing information that your friends and family may not be aware of on your Facebook, on Twitter, by email. And besides that, I would really just encourage you to support the initiative as well if you want to empower other volunteers if you don't have the time. But if you do have some time, please volunteer and sign up, and understand that we are really tailoring each project to the volunteers. And so it doesn't have to be something completely overwhelming. We understand that you have limited time and resources and other things going on. There are a lot of ways to make a difference without making it a full-time job, and we're here to support you as a staff.
Well, a lot of people do have a lot of time on their hands right now who are isolating, and that's a lot of our congregants. Thank you so much for the work that you're doing. Congratulations on the establishment of Secular Strategies as well. And I'm really, I for one, am very proud that the Society for Humanistic Judaism has branched out with this initiative, and appreciate all of your work on it. Take care. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
And of course, you can learn more at jfasd.org. The link is underneath our YouTube video tonight. Let's continue with a reading by Judy Chicago, one of my favorite, celebrating a future of peace. And then all that has divided us will merge, and then compassion will be wedded to power. And then softness will come to a world that is harsh and unkind. And then both men and women will be gentle, and then both women and men will be strong. And then no person will be subject to another's will, and then all will be rich and free and varied. And then the greed of some will give way to the needs of many. And then all will share equally in the earth's abundance, and then all will care for the sick and the weak and the old. And then all will cherish the young and nourish the young. And then all will cherish life's creatures. And then all will live in harmony with each other and the earth. And then everywhere will be called Eden once again. We continue with Naaseh Shalom.
Thou call
this community where we find strength and common purpose, we turn our minds and hearts toward all those who need our love and support. Those who are ill, those who suffer pain of the body or spirit, those who are lonely, those who have been wronged. Tonight, we extend our well wishes to these members of our community and to their loved ones, to Cece Stone, Joan Mann, Patty Becker, Julia Eliason, Titus Mendel, Lonnie Fleischer, Karen Tremper Harris, Robert Liebhaber, Larry Fisher, Jennifer Breen, Anne-Marie Kersniak, Greg Lowenthal, and Myron Tink. May all who suffer know that they are not alone. May they be healed quickly. May they experience a complete recovery, refuah shlema, the renewal of their bodies and the renewal of their spirits. Our thoughts turn to those who are no longer with us, our own loved ones, those whom our friends and neighbors have lost, the martyrs of our people whose graves are unmarked, and those of every people and nation whose lives have been a blessing to humanity. As we remember them, we meditate on the meaning of love and loss, of life and death. We recall now our loved ones whom death has recently taken from us, those who died at this season in years past, and those whom we have taken into our hearts with our own. Tonight, our community continues to mourn the recent death of Harvey Frank as we extend our condolences to Esther and his family. And to Arlene Goldberg, Yizichram Livracha, may each of them be a blessing in memory to those who must go through life without them. We also recall tonight these yahrzeits: Sarah Schiff, Harold Luria, Shirley Malinsky, Charles Bonet, Lorraine Pivnik, Ina Kadish, Joseph Kahn, Jack Keller, Earl Lapp, and Herman Gaden. One last programming note: we are continuing our book series, our book group actually, and our next book will be a wonderful book called The Weight of Ink. The author's name is, I believe, also Kadish, so you could find that at Amazon. It's a wonderful book about the late 17th century London Jewish community, a tiny one though it was, of Portuguese emigres. And it even touches upon Spinoza, for whom our youth education program is named. So The Weight of Ink, we'll have that discussion in late September, and I hope you'll enjoy the book. That's it for tonight, everybody. We're going to close with a song we haven't done since we were in person called Peace Be With You. Shabbat Shalom.
Peace be with you wherever you go. Peace be with you whatever you do. Peace be with you till we meet again. Peace be with you, my friend. Love be with you wherever you go. Love be with you whatever you do. Love Shalom Aleichem, Shalom, Shalom, Shalom Aleichem.